James Wild.
Thank you very much, Mr Betts. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Leeds East for securing this debate and for such a popular debate. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to respond on behalf of the opposition. I think the number of members who've spoken in this debate, and I think it's the third debate in this chamber this week, and I think the Minister's got a season ticket, just underlines the amount of casework that we all have to deal with, I dealt with in the last Parliament, to help parents and children to get the support that they need. And that's exactly what this debate is about. And we all want an education system that helps children and young people with SEND to fulfil their potential and live fulfilling lives. And I pay tribute to all those working in schools, including my sister, who is a Senko in a Norfolk school, to support those children. And we've heard from everyone who's spoken today about the demand and the challenges that that's causing and the pressure on funding. And we've seen the number of EHCPs and statements of SEN have more than doubled since 2015. In my own county of Norfolk, there's been a 33% increase in the last 5 years alone, and my honourable friend for Farnham and Borden referred to the pressures, the real pressures that particularly are occurring in Surrey. And it was in recognition of this growing demand that the last Conservative government increased the high needs budget by to £10.5 billion this year, 60% higher than it was in 2020. And to help increase much needed capacity, £2.6 billion was invested to fund new places and to improve existing provision. Nonetheless, as everyone has heard today, the level of demand continues to grow. And it's the need for more consistent support and outcomes that led to the SEND an alternative provision improvement plan that was published last year. This review came after a long period of discussion with the sector, with parents, with schools to understand what was needed, and it aimed to ensure that every child gets the right support in the right place at the right time. And at its core was the attempt to deal with the feeling that too many parents have that they have to battle a system, which every MP in this room knows about, and the Honourable Member for Portsmouth North talked about the challenges that there are in terms of getting the EHCPs done in time, and she had a suggestion about how that could potentially be addressed. I will give way.
For giving way. Under the previous government, in 2023, 98% of the appeals to tribunal were upheld. Doesn't that demonstrate the utter failure under the watch of the previous government that's created this broken SEND system?
Well, the honourable gentleman makes his point. I think it underlines the need for reform of the system, which is precisely why mediation was going to be part of the proposals that we brought forward. And these reforms were based around national standards, so there was a consistent approach. And the first area that was going to be brought forward was developing standards for speech and language, which is so important, and to improve the timeliness of the HCP process by introducing a standardised approach. But as part of our focus on SEND, the last government did open 15 new free schools, approved a further 40, and invested in training, again so important, for over 5,000 early years SEND practitioners. But I know the Minister is committed to delivering better outcomes, so can she confirm whether the government is committed to implementing the national standards and that approach that we put forward in those reforms? And the funding in the SEND sector remains a significant challenge, increasing pressure on councils. The recent County Council Network and LGA reports set this out very clearly, and of course in government we set out the safety valve and delivering better value programmes, which other members have referred to, and 90 local authorities are involved in. Additionally, the statutory override was introduced to prevent SEND-related deficits from overwhelming council budgets. However, that override is set to expire in March 2026. And without clear direction, local authorities face the prospect of making significant cuts. So can the Minister clarify what the government's intentions are here, and if the statutory override will be extended to give councils the flexibility to work with schools and families to make the changes that are needed? Local authorities are also seeing huge pressures from home to school transport costs. In Norfolk alone, that's £60 million, with 83% of that allocated to SEND pupils, money that's spent on journeys rather than delivering better education. So improving the mainstream education and the specialist provision closer to where children live is, of course, vital. And one of my first visits of over 40 that I've undertaken in my first term as an MP in my constituency was to Green Park Academy, where the head raised the issue which has been referred to of speech and language therapy and access to therapists. And during the Conservative government, we did make progress in improving access, recognising the long-term benefits of early intervention. But there is still much more to do, and I readily concede that. So I welcome the announcement the government made in July that it will continue the Nuffield Early Language Intervention Programme this school year, and I hope that it will continue beyond that. However, there is still considerable disparity in access, so I asked the Minister what steps the government will take to address this so that every child with speech and language needs gets the support that they deserve. I will give way.
Thank you. Would my honourable friend agree with me that it's a travesty that a child with SEND in the London Borough of Camden receives more than 3 times the funding of a child with SEND in my constituency of Bridlington and the Wolds, and that every child should have the access to the same support, funding and opportunity?
Absolutely. My honourable friend makes the point that our right honourable friend for Holton Price and Howland made earlier and made in a previous debate in the last Parliament as well. And I'm sure it's something that the Minister will touch on in her response. I will.
The point that you made around the safety valve, the LGA and the CCN have assessed that it's around £3 billion that safety valve is worth. Had the party opposite stayed in power, what would their solution be to fill that black hole?
Well, as the honourable gentleman will be aware from his presence in the chamber, we did not win the election, so that is for the government to come forward as to what it will do, because it is now in power and has to take decisions and has to take responsibility. It's the difference between opposition and government. Finally, I do have to highlight the impact of the Labour government's plans to impose VAT on independent schools from January and what this will mean for SEND provision. Over 100,000 children and young people without an EHCP are educated and receive specialist support in independent schools. And my right honourable friend for Tatton made this point very well and highlighted that putting VAT on their fees will disrupt the education for thousands of these pupils and also place further strain on SEND provision in the state sector. And by bringing these changes in partway through the academic year, Labour's plans seem designed to cause maximum disruption to those children's learnings and to the state school system. So is the government listening to schools, to parents, and will it act to ensure that these vulnerable children do not bear the brunt of this policy? I will give way.
He's talking about disruption to children and their development. Under the last government, in the last 10 years, investment in early intervention such as children's centres fell by about 44%. What effect did you think that had on young children?
Well, I think we need to look at these things in a round. We put record amounts into childcare, and we've just seen the latest rollout of our childcare plans, which I think the government now supports, although a little sotto voce. Anyway, to conclude and bring this debate so the Minister had time to respond, I think there's unity across this chamber, I hope, about the desire to ensure that the SEND system provides the support and outcomes that children and young people deserve. And to help achieve that, the last government did set out a path of comprehensive reform. And now it falls to the new government to continue to drive improvements and to tackle the challenges set out in this debate by members from all parties and to deliver the very best for children and their families.